what we call the new membership orientation. So we put this program on to all new law enforcement, child protective services, CASA, anybody that's what we call a multidisciplinary team partner. Okay, yeah, that's what y'all are. To give you an idea of what we do at the center, everybody thinks, oh, okay, you interview kids, and that's where it stops. No, it's a lot more than that. So our mission is to bring hope and healing by working together to break the cycle of child abuse. Our vision is to create a future free from child abuse through courage, hope, and healing for children in Northeast Texas. Our main office is in Winsboro. We're located on Highway 37. I tend to say we're centrally located in the 8 counties we serve with our main office. We also have a satellite office in Gilmer. We also conduct interviews there on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And we're also conducting counseling out of that office on Mondays and Wednesdays also. We've also opened our satellite office up in Emory. We do interviews there on Wednesdays, and right now just Wednesdays only because we only have 4 interviewers and we get kind of stretched going between Gilmer, Emory, and Winsboro. We have 2 interview rooms at a Winsboro office, so we can do 2 interviews at the same time there. We're also doing counseling out of our Emory office on Fridays now. This is the 8 counties that we cover. We cover Upshur, Camp, Titus, Franklin, Hopkins, Delta, Rains, and Winsboro. Anybody ever been to Cooper, Texas? Just remember, you have to pronounce Cooper correctly up there. If you pronounce it incorrectly, they will get on you up there, okay? Just want to let y'all know that. I like seeing y'all going to Yanis. We spend a lot of time in Yanis. Caitlin spends a whole lot of time at Yanis at the schools, so. But that's the area that we cover. Our staff, our executive director is Lauren. One thing y'all will learn about me today, I cannot pronounce names worth a flip, okay? So if I mispronounce it, I'm sorry, but like my director's new last name is Zastany. Still can't pronounce it correctly. It was Fleming, I can pronounce that. But Lauren, actually, she's from Mount Pleasant. She had worked at the governor's office in Illinois for a time, and she ended up moving to Frisco, Texas, where she ended up becoming involved in fundraising there. And then we stole her from there, so she's back in Mount Pleasant again. But she has been with us just a little over a year now. These are our 4 interviewers. We have Selena Heredia, that is one name I can pronounce, why I don't know. Hannah Means, Alexandra Walford, and Courtney Muniz. They all have to have a bachelor's degree in social services or some other related field to become interviewers. To be an interviewer, they have to have 3 blocks of training through the CAC of Texas. Before COVID, they would go down for a week and do 1 block and come back. A few months later, have to go down and do another block. COVID did a lot of things, as we all know, online, but we're starting to get back to in-person training again. So that's just some of the things that they have to do just to be an interviewer. Starting out, they have to observe so many interviews done by other interviewers. And then once they start, they have to mainly be interviewing children that are at risk, not kids that actually have something that we know happened to them. So they start off with the at-risk kids. They do so many of those, and then they're able to start actually doing interviews. For 6 months, I think their interviews have to be monitored by another interviewer while they're doing it. We have 3 family advocates, Leticia Sanchez and Tatiana Narvez, and of course, Caitlin. Caitlin pulls double duty as the community aid coordinator and as a family advocate. So every time a family comes through the center, one of our family advocates will sit down and meet with them and let them know what the center is about, also about resources that are out there, counseling, And that's another thing I'll talk about in a second, is that for every child that comes through our center, we offer them counseling, whether there's an outcry or not. That counseling is also open to the family. So if there's 3 siblings and they all need counseling, we open that up to them also. But then they go over crime victims compensation, starting that process, protective orders, things of that nature. They work closely with the crime victims coordinators at the district attorney's office in our counties that we serve. So that way we're all on the same mode or same page, and we're starting the process a little bit early. I like saying we're like the first 48. So within the first 48 hours, the kid's gonna be coming to us, starting the process with law enforcement, DFS. Prosecution side of things might not see anything for 3 to 6 months. So we're trying to get it started early and getting those cases known to the DA's office so they know what to expect, what's coming through in 3 to 6 months. And of course, myself, the MDT supervisor, Tatiana, she's also pulls double duty with the center. She also does all of her data entry. So all of the grant numbers, all of that, guess what? She comes up with that, she puts it in the system and gets it to our executive director. Missy Hooten, she's our MDT intake coordinator. So every time there is a statewide intake report made with Department of Family and Protective Services, we get a copy of it if it happened within our 8 counties. Law enforcement gets a copy of that. The reason that the CACs in Texas are getting those now is to make sure that no one gets dropped between the cracks. So we don't lose a child out there somewhere. Sometimes when it went to law enforcement, those intakes might go to the wrong agency. And the agency receiving them, or this ain't ours, and they just put it back and never tell anybody that, hey, it's the wrong one, it needs to go here. So they started coming to CAC of Texas so we can make contact with those law enforcement agencies to make sure that they got it. And also to see why DFS is not bringing these kids in for an interview if they meet our criteria. We have Jennifer Williams. She's our volunteer and special events coordinator. One of the biggest things during the year that she handles is angel tree. So every child that comes to our center qualifies for angel tree, and is what it is, or sounds like. We put on Christmas every year. Every child in the home, even though if they've not been interviewed or not, they're just siblings, they also qualify for angel tree. Now, how many we do last year, Caitlin? 5?
We usually go anywhere between 300 to 500, just depending on the year. So
our office definitely transforms into the North Pole. You cannot walk through our office because of all the presents lined up against the walls. But she does that, helps me with trainings. She also helps coordinate other trainings that we put on where we have other people come in to speak. So real great at that. Caitlin can't say enough about. Caitlin goes out to our 27 school districts that we cover. So far, she's been in 21 of the 27. During the school year, we do not see her. We've actually had to tell Caitlin, you have to come to the office 1 day a week because we have to remember who you are and make sure your address hasn't changed so we can send your paycheck. But she does the Play It Safe program at the schools. She also will go in and put parent nights, other thing. Me and her do a tag team of doing a Making the Right Choice presentation. That's more of an auditorium setting with the kids that covers sexting. Help me out, Caitlin.
Internet safety, sexting, bullying, cyberbullying, suicide prevention, sextortion, trafficking, and then all the laws that go with it.
Yeah. So we're basically also trying to tell the kids, okay, this is what you can get in trouble doing, so don't do it. Okay. But yeah, it's a good program and it's been very receptive with all the school districts that we've been in so far. We do the mandatory reporting, class with the teachers, going over what they're supposed to do if a child comes and outcries to them. We also do suicide prevention in schools. One thing we have found with schools, a lot of them like doing the online training. They get it done quick, they can do it during the summer and don't have to sit through a classroom. So that's our biggest enemy is the computer. Like everybody else, I hate computers. Except when I need it. Our executive assistant in HR is Brandy Royal. She's the one that makes sure all the grants get turned in. She does all the accounting for us. You name it, if it has a number with it, she does it. We have Shelley Martinez. She's our operations and development associate. She is now helping with fundraising there at the center. We have a golf tournament coming up, so she's big into that right now. We probably won't see her for the next 2 months. And if y'all are interested in golf tournament coming up, get with me afterward. I'll let y'all know about it. And pardon me for going so fast on a lot of this. This is a 3-hour program. I'm trying to fit into an hour and a half. Okay, so I'm trying to get everything in there for y'all. One thing we offer at the center, like I said, every child that comes through there is eligible for counseling. We will either try to set them up with one of our counselors or one of our contract counselors. And I'm sure y'all are finding out this is not as easy as it sounds when you're trying to find counselors. Are y'all short on counselors over here? So are we. Matter of fact, we just lost one of our counselors going into private practice. So we're actually hiring another one. So once we hire a new one, we'll be back up to 2 in-house counselors. And then I'm thinking we have 8 contract counselors. So we got counselors in Sulphur Springs, Mount Pleasant, Pittsburgh, Gilmer, and then I think there's even one in Tyler now, if I'm not correct.
Yes.
So a lot of our clients in the Mineola area would be coming over here. So, but one of the things that our counselors, they have to be trained in is trauma-based therapy with the type of interviews that we do with the kids. Of course, it's physical abuse, sexual abuse, so it's trauma-based. We find out a lot of the kids have PTSD issues. So if we have a kid come in and they don't want counseling right now, or the parent doesn't want counseling, if they come back to us 3 years later, as long as they were interviewed there, we'll get them set up with counseling. So, or if it's an old client, say from 6 years ago, case is already disposed of, guys in prison, they're still having issues, we will see them again. This is our board. Nobody really cares about the board, so I'm gonna skip them. We actually have a good board, so I'll give them kudos for that, but I ain't gonna name them all. Just kind of an idea for y'all, there are 70 child advocacy centers in Texas. There was 71, one of them dropped off. We cover 8 counties, so we're covering 3,500 square miles in the area that we serve. There's only 30 child advocacy centers that cover the county which they reside. So if you look at the map, all the ones that are in black, they only serve the county that they're in. So Smith County, y'all only do Smith. Van Zandt County only does Van Zandt. You talk about Longview, that's the Martin House. They cover Gregg, Harrison, and Marion County now, I believe. So doing the multi-road, there's some out there, the multi-county, but the number there's only one other CAC that covers 8. Now you get up here in the Panhandle, this thing got a corner on
It doesn't. Well, if it does, I don't know about it.
there it is. Okay, but yeah, it don't work on TV screen. But if you look up at the Panhandle, that's the bridge. The CAC up there is called the bridge. They cover 26 counties. Now, all the counties in white they do not have a CAC, so they are relying on others, and they don't have an MOU or any contracts with any other CAC, so they just kind of pick and choose whoever can get them in. Actually, one of our interviewers she's in love, and she's moving down to Pecos, Texas, which is somewhere down around in here. I don't know why. She met a guy that wants to be a highway patrolman. He's going through the academy, found out he's going to Pecos, and she's going with him. I'm gonna miss her. She's not an IT person, but if she gets down there, there's not many CACs to go to work at. So I think she's 2 hours from the biggest city, which is San Angelo. Is that right, Caitlin? San Angelo is like 2 hours away. But that just kind of gives you an idea of the number of CACs, where they're located, and what they do. Okay. We survey counties. We have the 3 offices. We work with 5 district attorneys. We work with 4 different juvenile probation offices. We work with 3 different offices of the Department of Family and Protective Services. They're all investigation units, but we got 3 different ones that we deal with. So that's 3 different supervisors and 2 different program directors, if I remember correctly. So it's same agency, just different folks. And as we all know, everybody does things a little bit different. Every one of our district attorneys does something a little different. Every one of our DFPS does something a little different. We work with 3 different crisis centers. We work with the Crisis Center of East Texas. We work with the Women's Center of East Texas and Safety. And they cover all of our 8 counties. So we have 5 different CASAs we work with. Got y'all, we got Lake Country CASA. CASA East. Okay, y'all are CASA of.
There's an East Texas CASA and then we're CASA of East Texas.
Yes, I get it.
Yeah.
Okay, and then we got.
East Texas is Longview,
Thank you.
and we're CASA for kids of East
Of
Texas.
East Texas. And then Paris is,
Lamar County.
you know. Trying to keep up with all the names really gets confusing sometimes, especially with me, I'm old, so. But yeah, we're going all the way from Paris covers Cooper. Y'all, of course, cover Wood and Rains in our county. And then we have Longview that covers Upshur. And then we got Mount Pleasant that covers Titus Camp and Morris. So that's another thing. Everybody's area that they cover doesn't match up with everybody else's area that we cover. So we have 8 different sheriff's offices. We have 17 police departments in these 8 counties that we cover. And our biggest increase is our ISD police departments. What folks don't realize is that these school police departments, they are a police department, just like the city of Tyler or city of Mineola. They are a police department. They have to do everything that these other agencies are doing, but they might only be a 1-man agency. So, but we've seen a huge increase in that. So out of the 27 school districts we cover, 21. Is that correct, Caitlin? 21 of those school districts have ISD police departments. Then we have 6 of them that have school resource officers. So that's a big thing. And that's also a thing about trying to get into the schools where the DFPS sometimes has some issues. So it's good for everybody to get to know everybody. But hey, I'll be coming to your school next week. You know, I got a kid I got to come see. And then again, we have the 27 school districts and the Partridge and the Pear Tree. Some of the misconceptions about child advocacy centers: we don't get paid for each interview that we do. We do not get paid only for outcries. We're a nonprofit. We don't get paid for it. Nobody pays us anything. we are a neutral party when it comes between law enforcement and Department of Family and Protective Services. We are not CASA. Everybody gets us confused with CASA. Everybody also gets us confused with CPS. I cannot tell you how many irate parents we get calling us thinking we're CPS. And that's just one debate when we get to tell them, no, we're not CPS. We're that's somebody else. You need to contact them. We do not investigate cases. We are that neutral party. We're there to kind of coordinate, help facilitate, but we're not there for the investigation. We want to make sure everybody's doing what they're supposed to be doing. That's why we have our multidisciplinary team meetings or our case review staffings, whichever way you want to call it. That's why we have those once a month. It's for that reason. Keep everybody coordinated and on board, but we're not conducting an investigation. We have to be that neutral party for that child. Some of our other partners are, of course, Department of Family and Protective Services. We have the 8th Judicial District Attorney's Office. They're in Hopkins County and they cover Franklin and Delta. They have the 76th Judicial District. They cover Camp and Titus counties. And this is why we only have 5 MDT meetings a month instead of 8, because we have the DA and we go by the DA's offices. So we have one that covers 3 and one that covers 2 and everybody else covers 1. Then you have the Delta County Attorney's Office, the Franklin County Attorneys, Hopkins, Rains, and Titus County Attorney's Office. Then you have the Upshur County Criminal District Attorney's Office. And then you have the Wood County Criminal District Attorney's Office. Why they chunk all these different, there's something there, and I can't remember what it is, but you have criminal district, you have district, and then you just have county attorneys. So this is all the police departments that we serve and the juvenile probation offices that cover our area. This is all the ISD police departments that we cover. Then advocacy groups, CASA, I got the names up there now. CASA of Titus, Camp, and Morris County. CASA for Kids of East Texas. East Texas CASA. They do a lot of the, what I would call the proactive. They're out there doing the online chat, where they're pretending to be a kid and trying to get people to respond to them. So I call that the proactive part. So yeah, they're getting the bad guy, but they don't really have a kid there. So where they're not having a kid that they're bringing to our center. Rangers, on the other hand, yes. So we will see them. This is just kind of, you've got this in your handout. But this is just kind of how things go from when it gets reported, either to law enforcement, DFPS, and then how it comes to us. And then the process it goes through after it gets to us. Where does it go from there? If there's an outcry, if there's not an outcry. And then how the case should go from there. Reasons we interview children at our center is sexual abuse, physical abuse, witness to a violent crime or domestic violence, drug endangered children, human sex trafficking. And we also interview adults that have cognitive delays. So we might have a 21, 22-year-old adult that may be operating on the level of maybe a 13-year-old. We will have them interviewed there at our center also. Now, I will say some other CACs have different criteria. I know some CACs may even do neglectful supervision. So if you've got a kid and the report's made that maybe they don't have electricity, maybe they don't have anything to eat at home, things like that, they may interview at another CAC. Unfortunately, we just get so many a year. we stay busy. We're not at all slow, especially with having the 3 offices. Any questions over any? Yes, ma'am.
So if you have a child that was involved in a crime that was not physical or sexual abuse, y'all won't interview them?
If a child was a suspect or
Victim or witness.
now, if they're a witness to a violent crime, let's say they a homicide or a shooting, something like domestic violence,
Robbery,
could
drug deals.
drug deals probably not, no. But if they're a witness to, and I had a homicide, I worked, when I was at the sheriff's office, 2 o'clock in the morning, I'm calling the Child Advocacy Center, and we're interviewing the kids because they witnessed that their, father shot their mother. So at 2 o'clock in the morning, we needed to do it right then, unfortunately, while I was fresh on the mind. But as far as now, one thing we do as far as children suspects, if we have a child that is a perpetrator in a case, say he perpetrated on his younger sibling, we will interview them there for at risk. We won't question them about what they did, but we'll see if anything's ever happened to them. But those interviews have to be done separate. They cannot be there on the property at the same time. Yes, ma'am.
To elaborate on what Amy asked you, if they witnessed a drug deal, wouldn't that make them a drug endangered child?
Drug endangered children are gonna be more towards the kids where the parents are doing the narcotics or they're actually around. If they're just witnessing, they might not have anything to do with a drug deal. Okay, you know, they might not be on drugs, their parents might not be on drugs. We're concentrating more on what is their immediate safety. If they're in danger.
So what's your definition of drug endangered?
Drug endangered is you got the parents smoking meth in the house, and the kids are present, or smoking meth in the car, smoking crack, whatever kind of drug it, might be. That's what we call drug endangered. It's where you typically, CPS, and the way it typically works, CPS will give a report that, hey, parents are doing drugs in the home. CPS will go out, they'll ask for a drug test of the parents and of the children. Kids test positive for methamphetamine, parents test positive for methamphetamine. So that makes it drug endangered. It also makes it a criminal offense at that point too. So then you get law enforcement involved in it.
Right, but we've had, I would say, at least a handful of cases out of our combined county that, you know, parents are arrested in a traffic stop with possession and the kids are in the car.
That's drug endangered. I mean, it's possession.
Well, it's neglectful supervision.
But it would still be drug endangered. So if the parents are in possession of drugs in the car and they get arrested, yes, that's considered drug endangered. I'm sorry if I didn't clarify.
No, that makes a lot
I'm
of
thinking
sense.
when you're saying witness a drug deal, I'm saying, okay, kid in the neighborhood sitting over.
No.
But yeah, if they're in the car, yes, then we would. That falls under drug endangerment,
And if the parents are actually selling it out of the home?
still drug endangerment.
Okay, that was
Yeah,
what we.
I'm sorry. But yeah, that's definitely, we would be interviewing them there at the center. Cause we do get quite a few. I mean, I think that's everywhere in the United States. That's everybody think, oh, it's worse than my community. No, it's everywhere. We're seeing it all over. It's not getting any better. We're gonna continue to see these kids. You know, back in the 90s, it was crack cocaine. That was the big thing. Now it's ice, methamphetamine. That's the big thing that we're seeing nowadays. Now with the fentanyl, they keep adding to stuff, and it's not getting any better. So yeah, if we get a kid, parents are dealing drugs, or they're just in possession, they get stopped, they get arrested, they can bring the kids to the center. Domestic violence. That's what we're trying to help train law enforcement on now. In domestic violence cases, we got mom and dad, and that are, you know, dad's beating up mom. Well, law enforcement tends to forget, your best witness is that kid. But they never talk to that kid, they never ever get the kid's name. So we're trying to educate them, that's your best witness on domestic violence cases. They need the counseling. So bring them in. And they qualify for crime victims compensation too. So bring them in. Let's get them some services started. You know, that's the key thing to remember about these kids. We want to be there to help them and get them the help that they need. Any other questions on the? Sorry I didn't cover that
That's
well the
good.
first go around, but did I do better on the second?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. To schedule an interview at our center, you just call our number, it's pretty simple. You call, you talk to Missy, she gets the information from you, and she schedules an interview, and you show up for the interview. Pretty simple. There's nothing complicated about it. Same thing with our after hours or holiday schedule. We got a after hours number that you call it, you actually talk to the interviewer that's on call. Even if it's at 2 o'clock in the morning, you tell them what's going on. And you drive to the interview. We'll be there at 2 o'clock. So AM. We're always there typically PM, so but AM will be there too. Now some considerations we want all of our partners to know when we're talking about after hour interviews is we want to do the best interview for them. We want to get the most information from that child that we can. But some of the things that kind of get in the way sometimes, has the child been awake? If this is at 2 o'clock in the morning, has the child been awake since 7 o'clock? You know, when they got ready for school the following morning, have they been awake that entire time? We've actually had kids come in and fall asleep in the interview. And no, we couldn't do our best interview with them because they fell asleep. Another thing, has the child been in a hospital having the SANE exam done? If it's an acute SANE exam that's within the first 120 hours of something happening, they can be in the hospital for up to 6 hours, unfortunately. And then they're gonna come to it. So they've been up all day, they've been at the hospital all afternoon and part of the evening. Now you're gonna come to the center for an interview. Are you gonna get the best? They're tired, they're hungry, they're stressed out. So probably not. If they're gonna be safe and we can do it at another time, best thing is let's do it. Let them get a little sleep and then we'll do it later if possible. When was the last time the child ate? I cannot tell you how many times that we had to get takeout up there to stand with their kids that come up and their families and the MDT partners. Let me tell you, there's something totally sick to put away a lot of pizza. Main thing is the child going to be safe? If we do not do the interview when you're wanting it at 2 o'clock in the morning, main question, is the child going to be safe, and will critical information or evidence be lost if that interview is delayed? If it's not going to be lost, it's not going to hurt the investigation. If the child is safe, then I say wait until the following day and let that child get a little bit of sleep. Subsequent interview or previously interviewed child. We run into this quite a bit. So if a child has been interviewed at our center and the allegations are about the same suspect and same allegations again, they've already been interviewed over it, we're going to ask them to go get permission from their district attorney before we re-interview that child. They have to get that authorization again to do it. Because there's a lot of things that can come up in court if we do that. We actually got asked yesterday, day before, they're wanting to know now if a particular kid, if if they've ever been there any time before against any other suspect, giving an interview, because they have to get that out to the defense now. So even if this same child was a victim by somebody else, they're wanting to know that also. And they've got to disclose all that information to the defense at discovery. So we're gonna ask that they get authorization before we do another interview. After our interviews, we'll only do in Winsboro. It's just mainly a lot has to do with safety issues. And we're more equipped there at the center to accommodate a large number of people. Typically at 2 o'clock in the morning, you get the whole family showing up. So we have at least places we can get something to eat, for them to eat, brought to the center. Alleged perpetrators are not allowed to be on our property at any time. So if you've got a child there and the alleged perpetrator is, let's say, father, and he shows up, he's gonna be asked to leave by me or anybody else there. If he refuses to leave, then we're calling law enforcement and he can go to jail for criminal trespass. The only thing that we allow an alleged perpetrator to be on our property for is a juvenile perpetrator that's being interviewed or at risk to make sure that nothing's happened to them. But if it's an adult, they're gonna be made to leave. Some of the responsibilities, that we ask law enforcement, DFPS, they need to notify the family of the child or the guardian, as to when and where the interview will be held. To be surprised that, hey, can you schedule an interview? No, that's your job. You're the one calling us for the interview. We need you to go and do the legwork on it. We also have to make sure that the child has transportation. That would not sound too complicated, but we actually they forget transportation for the kids. So we have to make sure they got transportation to the center. We also require, so if, let's say DFPS gets an intake, they see it's more like we're gonna have a criminal case tied with it. We make sure that DFPS contacts law enforcement. That way they're notified. We're gonna do it anyway, but we make sure that they do it also. Because they're working a joint investigation. Remember, we don't do the investigation. We just do the interviews, the counseling. We also require that they arrange for an interpreter ahead of time. We do have several there at the office that do speak Spanish. They can translate, but that has to require DA approval. Some DAs want a certified interpreter to do the actual interview. But if they're good with one of our interviewers that speak Spanish, then they will do it. Again, we must remain neutral. We also ask that the family, or that law enforcement DFPS, they're required to be at all interviews. So if we have a child show up for an interview and we don't have law enforcement or Department of Family Protection Services there, then we can't do the interview. Law enforcement or Department of Family and Protective Services have to be there. We ask that they be on time. We'll wait 30 minutes. Then we run into scheduling issues with other interviews that we already have scheduled for that day. We do understand not come across a traffic accident and get stuck by a train for a little bit, be a little bit late, and we'll make it work. But if you're just late, matter of fact, had them this morning. Oh, I forgot about that interview today. Okay then. So we also want to let everybody know that each interview is going to last about an hour and a half per child. So if you got 3 kids that are there, we're going to be there most of the day. We want them to let the family know this information So it's not a shock. We've had families come in and don't even know what they're there for. They say, we're just told by so-and-so that we have to be here. No, why? No. I have to explain to them why they're there. So. One thing we ask that they tell the family about coming to the center, is we're not a doctor's office. We don't give shots at the office there. It's not a counseling session. We want them to know that the interview is going to be recorded. And we take the kids on the tour before the interview ever starts to let them know at each step of the process. We're gonna be in this room while Officer so-and-so and this lady are gonna be in here, and they're gonna be watching it on the TV. And they're the only ones that are gonna be watching this interview. Nobody else is gonna see it in this building except for them. So we want them to know that up front. Kids are smart. Don't lie to the kids because they'll read right through it every time. And we tell them that a nice person's gonna be talking to them, that talks to a lot of kids and a lot of teenagers, and just tell the truth. That's the only thing we want anybody telling the kids when they come there. We don't want them to say, hey, you come here, you're gonna get a toy. If you come talk to these people, that's a no-no. Some of the things that you can expect, you have this in your handout. I think this is an excellent thing that kind of gives an idea about what these kids do and do not understand when you're interviewing them or talking to them in general. So you got a 2 to 3 year old, they're going to understand who and what. So who did it to them and what happened. But they're not going to be able to tell you when it happened, how it happened, how many times it happened, things like that. They're just going to be able to give you the basic information. As the child gets older, they learn more. They're able to tell you more. So if you look at 10 and up, they should be able to tell you everything you need to know. But from 7 to 9, they might be able to tell you how many times. They might be able to tell you the chronological order of things, and they might not. Basic elements of the actual forensic interview is an introduction, introducing yourself to the child. Rapport building, that is a huge thing. We have officers and we have DFS. Oh, why can't they just hurry up and get to the questions? Can't do that with kids. You've got to build that rapport up where they trust you, where they will talk to you, where they will open up. Then there's a developmental assessment where they're able to identify body parts and what they're calling a body part. Kids, we're going to have a wall one day with all the different names of the different body parts. And that wall will be filled of all the different things they call their body parts. It's amazing. But it makes sense once you do that assessment as to what they're talking about in the interview. Now we're on the same page. Now I know your English now. I know what you're talking about. I understand this. So that is a big thing right there. They also give them guidelines for the interview. You know, they just want to be truthful. They don't want them running around. So they're going to it's kind of laying down the law in a nice way. But this is how we're going to do it. Give structure to the interview. Give structure to that kid. What the kids will, a lot of them want is structure, correct? They want some kind of structure in their life. Then another assessment is how do they interpret truth and lie? Do they understand it? Do they not understand it? Probably just too young. They don't comprehend it. They might understand right and wrong, but not truth and lie, or good and bad. So have to get that assessment from. The multi-session forensic interview. Basically what this is, if we have a child that comes into our center, that we know has a lot to take. Or if they're doing the interview and it comes out that they were already in there for 2.5 hours and the kid is still talking, then we might take a break. If something to eat, come back or reschedule for the following day. Give you an idea of one, I had a case, we had a child, she had been interviewed like 8 times. And a lot of them were my cases. And the thing was, it was always the suspect was her father. It was sexual abuse and physical abuse both. But the bad thing, every time we would go out, we'd make a report, I'd get the case, schedule the interview at the CAC. If they get to the CAC, she denied the allegations. Every single time. Well, finally, we got with DFPS, myself, DA's office, saying, something's going on with this kid. I don't know. Where do we need to go? What do we need to do? So we developed a plan. Before we even got to enact that plan, here she is, ran to a neighbor's house, alleging dad had abused her again, both sexually and physically. Deputies go out, take a report, CPS comes out, removes her from the home. But one thing was different this time, is that the person they put the child in care of was somebody new. All the other times was an aunt, which was the sister to dad. So now we got this child in with somebody different. We get her to the center. She tells us everything that happened and then something. We had to stop because she was physically getting ill in the interview. So we had to reschedule. So that's what that's for. They have so much to tell. You can't get it all in one sitting. Luckily he's in prison. But it took a long time. And it took getting away from that aunt. So sexual assault nurse examiners, that's who does our SANE exams. We have 3 SANE nurses that we contract out with. We have Kim Bassinger, Missy Edgers, and Elizabeth Williams. They not only contract out with us, but they also contract out with other CACs, and they also do adult SANEs at some of the local hospitals, Mount Pleasant, and Sulphur Springs, and Greenville, I believe. So they're kind of going all over the place up on that northern side for us. Some of our other agencies, like Upshur County and Gilmer Police Department, and I'm sure Mineola, they will use Mother Francis or UT down here, or Good Shepherd, Christus and Longview, for the acute SANE exams. Now, all non-acute SANE exams will be done at our center. We have the capability to do the non-acute SANEs at all 3 of our locations. So, any question on SANE exams? Yes, ma'am.
So what's the difference between a non-acute exam and an acute exam?
Okay, a non-acute exam is, okay, let me start over. An acute exam is an exam that's done within 120 hours of the assault taking place. Those are going to be done typically at a hospital. Now, I think the CAC here in Smith County can actually do them at their center, I think.
I think that's something they're either doing or working toward.
Or working for. So, but typically they're going to be done at a hospital. Now, anything outside of 120 hours is a non-acute. Those can be done at our center. The primary thing about a non-acute is, one, letting the child know that everything's all right with their body. Okay, that's a big question that the kids have. You know, what's wrong with me? This happened, now something's wrong with me. You know, you gotta let them know everything's okay. Another thing is, the nurse might see evidence that they contracted an STD. And the nurse can refer them back to their family physician to get treatment for that STD, which that's evidence in a criminal case. Another thing is the patient history that the child gives the nurse is admissible in court. So that's another witness for the prosecution right there is the same nurse. It falls outside of the area of hearsay. They're actually testifying as an expert witness. So that's why they're so important. A lot of changes over the past few years. Law enforcement now has to offer even a non-acute saying, even if the assault took place 6 years ago. They have to offer that sane exam now. So that's something we've been working on with law enforcement. Is making sure they're educated on that. We're still doing, matter of fact, at all our MDT meetings that we had this month, all 5 of them, that is the one thing I'm talking about in our MDT meetings is the law concerning sanctions, making sure they are aware of it. But I know some of them are not, because we've had discussions. So we're trying to do that to make them aware. One of the new laws, which I don't really know why we put it in there this year that's coming out, is that it's the ultimate responsibility of the guardian or the parent to make a decision for that child as to whether they get a sane exam or not. Law enforcement has to offer it. They also have to fill out the form. I'll show you in just a second. I'll get to it in a minute, but they have to fill out an authorization form. And that's either rejecting or declining or requesting an exam. They have to keep that file, that form in their case file from that point on. They can't not keep it in there. It used to be they would just give it to the same nurse and that would be the end of it. They have to actually keep that in their file now. I guess somebody is going to come around and start inspecting their case files. I don't know. Another thing is, used to be that when somebody would, they had authorized a saying, used to be law enforcement had to pay for it up front, and then get reimbursed by the Office of Attorney General. That's no longer. Same nurses bill the Office of Attorney General or the hospital bills directly to them now. It's taken law enforcement out of it. They don't have to have a special amendment in their budget to cover sane exams. So a lot of things are happening. Yes, ma'am.
Is there a statute of limitation on the non-acute sane exams?
For
How
children,
long? Yes, I mean, like if something happened when they were 7 years old and now they're 17 years old.
if my interpretation of it, as long as, again, if it happened 6 years ago, they're gonna do it. And there's no statute limitation anymore on sexual assault. One thing that these exams do cover now is some indecency cases, where before it was just if there was penetration or not. Under like sexual assault or aggravated sexual assault. Now it actually covers some indecency cases. Which that's a big plus, because one thing that children have a hard time is articulating what penetration is. You know, not big rude, but I tell them, that much is penetration. You can have penetration if it's touching through the clothes. So if it's touching through the clothes or under the clothes, I suggest that they go and get a sane exam. So that is a good thing that they've done. And again, when it comes to kids, sexual assault, there's no statute of limitations anymore. I think what else? Did that answer your questions? Okay. Any other questions concerning sane exams?
As far as boys, it may not be as common, but how do y'all go about doing same exams for boys?
Same way.
Same way.
Yeah, there is no different. I mean, now when it gets to the nurse, there's a little different, you know, actually doing the exam. But the process is the same for boys or girls. It doesn't matter. if I have a child, I could, as well have same things. So. Just the process is the same, but what actually takes place with the singers is just a little bit different. The key thing is about an acute SANE and non-acute. A non-acute is for that additional outcry, corroborates what they said in the interview. That's a good thing about cooperation. When you have an acute exam, one is the cooperation also, but you're also primarily looking for evidence. That's for physical evidence, DNA, things like that. You're not typically not going to have that after 120 hours. More than likely, you're probably not going to have it after 96 hours. But they actually extended it a year from 96 to 120. Again, like I said, regardless of how much time goes by, they have to offer it. The indecency cases I just spoke about, they have to offer those on those also. I think we already covered all that, did we not? We'll skip on. How am I doing on time, Caitlin?
About 20 minutes left.
Oh, moving right along. Okay, I'm gonna take a breath a minute, I'm sorry. This is that form I was telling you about that law enforcement has to fill out. They've actually, one of the new laws they came out with this year is doing away with a form, but that form is the payment. It's not the authorization. There's a lot of confusion out there right now when we're talking about forms. A lot of them are thinking this is going away. It's not. You still have to have that form filled out. Again, one of the biggest things is they're giving more power to the child and actually the guardians or the parents now with the new law. They can refuse it. If they don't want that, if the parent does not want a SANE exam performed, they can actually refuse it. So we're going to see how that goes. It's something that's always been the case, but they put it in writing now. We'll just see if that has any more play. Another thing that basically trying to talk law enforcement talking them out of having a SANE thing. That has been a problem throughout the years. Is that law enforcement will talk them out of it. And they don't see the need, I guess you would say. I kind of compare it to turning a light switch on. When I first got into investigations and started doing these cases, it was like, okay, now I understand. When I was a patrol officer, I didn't understand all this. Well, I think there's some that, especially with smaller agencies, they're not exposed to it. They might get 1 or 2 cases a year. Where I was working at, I was getting 75 sexual abuse cases a year. That's not counting physical abuse or drug endangered children cases. That was just sexual abuse cases. That was 75 a year for a county of 45,000 people. I would figure by now all them people most of that county would be in jail, but we're still getting cases, but that's everywhere.
If a parent is potentially accused in there, do they still have the right to refuse this?
No, this would be for the legal guardian and the non-offending parent. Now, that's where a problem can come in, is that you might have the non-offending parent who doesn't believe the child. And that's where CPS would step in, basically saying that the parent's not being protected at that point. Then if CPS gets awarded custody of that child, CPS can authorize the SANE exam at that point. So.
How could this go about in a single parent household who the primary parent is the perpetrator?
CPS is pretty much going to remove the child from the home at that point. That's where law enforcement and CPS should be working together closely. Then CPS would get temporary guardianship over that child and could authorize this exam. So, and that does happen. You know, and it amazes, when I look at parents that, and I wish I'd brought that other form with me, and y'all could have took my little test. But when some non-offending parents just cannot fathom that this spouse of 30 years or however long actually did something to their child. It's like getting hit in the face with a baseball bat. I can't believe it. You know, you're throwing in 48 hours, you're throwing a lot of information at this non-offending parent. Sometimes you gotta give them a week, maybe even 2, to let it soak in that this really did happen. You know, not everybody catches it right off the bat. I've had cases where it's took them months. I've had it where I've actually had to sit down with the non-offending parent and say, you tell me what you don't understand that's going on here. And this is with a spouse that confessed and they still don't believe it. Sometimes you have to have, I call it come to Jesus meeting. You just got to sit down with them and tell them flat out what happened. Sometimes you got to give them a week or 2 to let everything soak in, let everything adjust, because you have just blew their entire world out of the water. That's the breadwinner of the family that you've taken away from them now. That's the one that worked. You know, mom stayed at home, let's say. That changed their life dramatically. Had one lady one time, it took her a while. She had 3 kids, and one of them was adopted. He was taking photographs of them, putting them out on the internet. He was the breadwinner. She stayed at home. Their personal life was weird. I mean, but she got to thinking something was going on. So she started sleeping on the couch in between their room and the kids' rooms. Okay. So what are you having problems with? You saw something was going on. You had concern because you're sleeping on the couch. You're trying to protect the kids, put yourself in between them. It didn't work. She'd go to sleep, he'd go get the kids. But it took her a while. Finally, it took her to get on her own feet about 2 years. But she finally did it, but it took her a while. And it's a bad thing for those non-offending parents to go through. So I say, keep that in mind. They're getting hit in the face with a baseball bat. Then you get some that, I'm sorry, they're ignorant. You can't believe your kids over what this guy's saying. And I will say this about kids. When a kid says something happened, you can pretty much take it to the bank that it happened. Better than 90% of all kids that outcry, something's happened. You've got a small percentage. But when a kid says it happened, I guarantee you it happened. And the way I conducted my investigations when I was an investigator was, I'm going to believe that kid 100%. Don't matter how crazy it sounds, I'm going to believe them until they tell me that it didn't happen or I find evidence that proves otherwise. And that's the way I conducted them. And because kids are truthful, they're not adults, especially your littles. You know. Our case review. Any other question on SANE exams or anything? Or is that? Our case review staffings, like I said, this is our schedule. We have them 5 a month. Wood County is the last Tuesday of the month. And we always have them at 12, and we feed our Wood County bunch. The other ones we have to travel, and it's kind of hard to get food to everybody. But one thing we look at attendance in our MDT meetings. The CAC of Texas, who I was telling y'all earlier that provides our grant funding, they get it from the feds, they distribute it out to us. They look at our attendance at our case review staffings. Another thing we need updates from all the other agencies to coordinate that, joint, that joint investigation. We're not investigating, but we're trying to help everybody else investigate. We want everybody to be on the same page with the same information. What we have found with CASA in particular is that sometimes the child has told y'all something, or y'all find out some other dynamics of their family that nobody else knew at that point, which is really imperative in the investigation. It's about them gaining trust, and they get trust in y'all. They're gonna tell y'all some stuff, which can be good for the investigation. So, learning new information about cases. Even if the case has already been filed with the district attorney's office and it's waiting to go before the grand jury, y'all may have some great information that could be useful for that district attorney, which I'm sure y'all see that pretty regular, right? So, but that's a good thing at the MDT meetings for this information to come out, because everybody involved in that investigation should be at that meeting. Every agency signs an MOU and working protocols with our center. We do that every 3 years, or unless there's a change in leadership. And part of that agreement is for the representative from each agency to participate in the case review staffings every month. One thing we have now, used to be, had a DVD player, recorded the interviews. Now it's all done on computer. And we have a system called Vidinix. So basically, if an interview's there, an officer, he can log into Vidinix, and he's given access to this one interview, or any of the interviews he does at our center. He can access them and review them at any time. He can also download them. The good thing about Vidinix, let's say he downloads it and he puts it on a disk and the disk gets lost, we can actually go in and disable that disk so nobody can ever see it again. It will not play it ever again. It's done. So it's got the encryption on it. It's also good file backup and storage now. We actually have a room or a building out back that's about half the size of this room. It's 3 foot of concrete all the way around, and on top, it's like a tornado cellar. But that's what we keep all of our files in. It's climate controlled. So now we can do it online, basically, with the encryption. So it's hopefully going to save us a little space, because I don't know if we can afford to build another vault. But y'all do look at interviews also. So have y'all used the Vidinix before?
I have.
Okay. So more than likely in the future, Vidinix is what you're going to be looking at. Okay. We have 3 new additions to our center. We have therapy dogs. If we know we need to have them there for an interview, we will have them there, or during counseling, or for our MDT partners. So if y'all ever in that neighborhood and you want to visit from any of our friendly canines, it's good. What's it called? Trauma therapy.
Yes, the trauma focused,
Trauma focused therapy. Yeah.
TFCBT.
Hey, all these new words I'm trying to get used to. Okay. I'm kind of old school on top of it. But yeah, it's amazing when we have a kid come in for counseling and we got the therapy dog there for them, or we have a kid that wants a dog there, before the interview, to see them light up, and it really relaxes them when they go in. But these folks are great. Some of the trainings that we offer, we have what's called SAFIC. It's Sexual Assault, Family Violence Investigators course. So this is primarily for law enforcement, but also we do have some DFPS that come take it also. but it covers that. We do legal updates, every 2 years. So after this September, since we got all the new laws coming in, we're gonna put on, 2 sessions in one day. We'll have a morning session and afternoon. It's only a 4-hour long course. So we'll have a morning and afternoon. We're also putting on the human to sex trafficking course, which y'all, when we send out the emails, welcome to register for any of these, okay? We also have our 2-day conference. We just got through having that a couple of months ago up at Region 8 Center, which is in between Pittsburgh and Mount Pleasant. That's a good, we have a lot of, anybody been to that? Has anybody in here been to that one?
What?
The 2-day conference we put on every year? If you've not been to one, it's great. We have some good speakers come in. Primarily when we go to the Crimes Against Children conference in Dallas, we try to pick from the speakers up there, and then we'll reach out to them and we'll come down and put on a course for us. So it's really good. I call it CACIT, but I can't say that around our center much because the ladies, I'm the only guy that works at our center. So I'm the only guy out of 14 ladies. And they don't like the word CACIT, or because, hey, we got to get a CAC done. Well, they're talking about an interview. When law enforcement, hey, I need to get a CAC, or DFPS says I need to get a CAC. They don't like the word CAC. So I call it CACIT. Crimes Against Children Investigators Training. It's a 1-day course, basically training law enforcement how to work these cases from when they initially get the case as a patrol officer all the way to prosecution. Then again, we do the new member orientation. This is my 3rd or 4th time this year so far putting this on. I'll probably put it on at least one more time before the end of the year. And then we also do the vicarious trauma and resiliency. We actually had Dr. French here in Tyler come over and put that on for us about a year ago. So, and that's still not covering all the trainings that Caitlin and I do at the schools again. We also can custom make trainings if it's related to Crimes Against Children. The schools were wanting me to put on a presentation about vaping. Well, couldn't get vaping. It didn't meet the criteria, so I couldn't get any of it. So, but we'll cover anything else that we can. And we also sponsor so many of our MDT partners every year to go to the Crimes Against Children conference. So one thing I tell our MDT partners is you show up to the monthly meetings and you stand a better chance of going to the Crimes Against Children's conference than somebody that don't show up to the meetings. So it's all about sharing that information. If it was a perfect world, I would say every MDT meeting that we have is just wonderful and great and we exchange information, but no, it's not a perfect world. But we do have several of those meetings that are good and that are beneficial and useful, and it's training the other ones that are not to get that way. So one way I've started doing is we have twice a year, we have our long list. We go over every case twice a year that we have open. And I'll invite the good counties with the not so good counties and combine those meetings and let them see how a good MDT meeting works. So we'll see how that goes. As far as releasing information, we're not going to release any information to anybody except for law enforcement or DFPS and to the district attorney. Anybody else, including parents, are going to have to go through the district attorney's office. Any questions? How am I doing on time?
You are right on track. 1:20 is nothing.
All right.
Amazing.
Well, I wish I had a little bit more time, but I know it went really fast, so if there's anything I wasn't clear on, obviously there was a couple of things that I wasn't clear on, but if there's anything y'all have questions about? I got a minute, something left.
Good job.
Yes, ma'am.
In the case of a non-offending parent that doesn't believe the child, is it common, uncommon, ever happened to where that parent is charged with something or let it happen?
Yes, it depends on the circumstances, and yes, I've actually filed on some parents, some quote, non-offending parent. I can't call them non-offending because they did something. You know, the thing is, the biggest thing about non-offending parents that you see is that the child will tell that non-offending parent that something happened and they never go and report it. You can file them for not reporting. And I've done that several times. One thing that you'll see in my experiences with some district attorneys is that you might not file on that non-offending parent right then because you still need them as a witness. They might be a more hostile witness than anything, but we gotta get this guy in prison. So you might see them waiting and letting that trial get done, then go back and let's charge the non-offending parent. Everybody think, oh, they ain't doing nothing to that. Well, there's a method to the madness. We need to get that in. They need that information for the prosecution. They need to get them in prison. They might not be real cooperative, but the information they're given might be vital to the case. It could corroborate what that child has said. But yes, I've actually had to file on several. And they don't like it. I don't like them either. So, oh well. Anything else?
Other questions, my friends?
This is, if y'all ever need anything from me, this is my information here. You should also have my card in the folder also. Feel free to give me a shout, email me. And this is something else that we're trying to get started up in our area is the North Texas Crimes Against Children Protection Team. A lot of areas, like, you know, here in Tyler, I mean, you got the CAC, you have DFPS and law enforcement all housed in one place. In our area, it's not going to happen. We got too many moving parts. We have a lot of small agencies. What we're wanting to get is everybody involved at the very beginning of an investigation, and for the more experienced officers in our area to be able to help these smaller agencies that may only see that 1 or 2 cases a year, we can help them. So that's kind of what we're trying to get reignited and get started up there. So hopefully if I see y'all again, I'll have some better news on that one. So thank y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Freddie. We really appreciate it. That was a great presentation. Everybody